Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This is episode 70, Monster Sound Show, where we'll be taking you back to an opening day attraction at the Disney MGM Studios. And I am your host, Todd McCartney, and sitting with me always this evening from Ohio, Mr. JT Cougar. How are you doing tonight, JT?
Good. It's a hot one. We're
warm, huh?
Yeah, it's been nice though. Enjoying the last few weeks of summer, and this is. I just told you guys, this is one of my favorite early attractions at MGM Studios. I love this movie making biz stuff, so it's a lot of fun for me.
There you go. Yeah, I know you grew up and you really went down there in the age of MGM. So this is core MGM as it was in the beginning. So. All right, and also seeing you tonight, coming from the Sunshine City, Mr. Hal Bowers. How you doing tonight, Hal?
Aloha, I'm doing fine.
Excellent. We had a little bit of tropical up this way. We had Henri come up.
Yeah, we just kind of pushed that over to your guys, so you can get a little taste of that.
Yeah, we didn't get much here, but other areas got a lot of rain. And Mr. Brian P. Miles coming in from Philadelphia. You got a little rain too, I believe.
Greetings and salutations. We did, but it finally cleared up this evening, and I got about an hour out by the pool to watch the sunset because the sky finally cleared after like 8 days of clouds. So
there you go, giving you a little more summer here to go.
Yep.
So. Well, as always, we'd like to go back to last month with any comments and corrections.
Yes, as always, I love a good celebrity story, and we've had numerous from Tom Cruise, but nothing new in the hopper. But we did have a correction from Jim. He says, Tom Cruise is everywhere back in the day. Tom starred in Days of Thunder with Nicole a few years before Far and Away. So we were set in, I believe, the last episode they met on Far and Away. They actually met.
I got my Us Weekly or People Magazine card pulled because I got the order of films that they met on out of order. So my apologies, Jim.
Brian, you're not watching enough PM Magazine, are you?
You are. Entertainment Tonight, man. It's Mary Hart
you're
let
ET.
me down.
Okay.
I just, the thing is, I never watched Days of Thunder. I'm not a race car guy, so
I don't think I've seen that one either.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you it right now. Spoiler alert from 1989.
Yeah.
It's like Top Gun, but with cars.
Oh.
So he gets in a crash. He gets scared, just
Somebody
like on
die.
Top Gun. Somebody almost.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he has to overcome. And then he does. So.
Is it like Talladega Nights?
Yeah, I was just going to say, is it better than Talladega Nights? Or
It's more serious. I mean, which isn't hard to do, but it's also a very gritty version of NASCAR that isn't exactly accurate. So there you go. But they did meet on the set of Days of Thunder in 1989 and not Far and Away. So thanks, Jim, for the correction. And we're looking for more celebrity stories. We love hearing them, so send them our way.
And Hal, over to you. You've got a correction as well from
Yes. I have a correction and some embellishment about our Adventure Club stories from an anonymous source who, in 2003, got to go into the club during the daytime and got a little tour backstage, an official tour. He said, "Cast wardrobe is where Enzo's hideaway is now." So just as a little...
that's where they kept the gorilla mask that you would put on
yes.
to walk between scenes. I got it.
And so he got to see the backside of the sort of chest bureau that had the genie head in it. Mm-hmm. And he describes it as from the backside, there's basically like a large mirror with sort of a hole in the middle. And the actor would stick his head through the hole, and there was black drape that would cover behind the head, so that way you couldn't see any light that was coming through from behind. And then there was kind of like a little box with attachments for handles, and you just kind of stand in a little pit and then like move your head up and down and side to side, and it was weighed and balanced so that way when you grabbed onto the handles, the entirety of that mirror moved around sort of behind the scenes. And since you were only seeing a mirrored image on the front side, it's like you didn't notice that the entire apparatus was moving around. So that's how that illusion worked.
That's cool. Excellent.
Very cool.
All right, JT, over to you for this month's listener mail.
All right, we got a good mailbag this month. First one, let's get right into it, is from Jeremy. Jeremy says, "Hi guys, first of all, I'm one of those binge listeners that caught up about the last 4 or 5 years all at once." He says, "After months of listening to you guys every time I got in the car, I feel like you guys are family." That's very nice, Jeremy. Hey, there's an event coming up in April. Maybe you want to meet your family in person.
That's right, yeah.
Family reunion. So it even says his 16-year-old daughter gets excited every month when the intro music comes on for our podcast. That's super fun. Anyways, Jeremy got around to scanning some photos from 75 photos from 1986. And he shared the link with us, and we'll put those in the show notes. Lots of goodies on there, from the Epcot fountain to all sorts of fun stuff, but a lot of good ones. So appreciate you listening, Jeremy, and we really enjoy the photos here, and we'll put those in the show notes. Next one, this just came in today. This is from Andy. He says, "Hi guys, I have a fun and extraordinary niche Disney tidbit for you. Earlier this summer, he performed in a concert up in New Hampshire. He remembered that according to the tag, the Swan and Dolphin plush toys that Disney released a long time ago were manufactured in New Hampshire at Douglas Cuddle Toys. He looked at the address. It was right down the road from where he was staying. He drove by and took a picture. It's such a bizarre connection to make and have these rare plushes come from such a remote corner of the country." He said, anyways, he thought we'd get a kick out of it. So he sent us a photo of Douglas Cuddle Toys. And how I liked your reply. He said he should have went inside, seen if there was any inside there.
Yeah, exactly. Knock on the door and demand.
I want a dolphin and a swan.
Right.
Now.
Stat.
All right, we're moving into Tom Yoder here. Tom's writing us about part 3 of Pleasure Islands, and he says he just reached the point where Hal is describing the falling bar stool gag, the Adventurer Clubs, which he'd never heard about before. He's experienced this gag, but an extremely spy-themed bar in Milwaukee. There's also one in Chicago. It's called the Safe House. Get it? Like, meet me at the Safe House.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time I've been anywhere and thought the detail and fun lived up to my expectation of Disney standard. More fun now knowing it shares the gag with Adventurers Club. He highly recommends the Safe House if we're ever free. So,
in fact, isn't Milwaukee an Indian name?
Yes, Pete, it is. Actually, it's pronounced Miliwake, which is Algonquin for the good land.
Oh, wow.
I was not aware of that.
I forgot about that. That's awesome. All right. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate that, and we will be sure to check out the Safe House when we are in the area. What's interesting is I felt we got a number of these emails where people recall their time at like themed bars and things like this, and then it got me thinking, I don't know if Disney was necessarily the first, but this theme bar thing, I mean, there are random ones around me, and there's a few out there, and you guys know how much I love a theme restaurant. Mitch wrote us, though. He says he's listening to Pleasure Island Part 3, Adventures Club. He'd never been before, but he says it sounds a lot like Jekyll and Hyde in New York City. And then he said Hal brought it up in the episode. And, I mean, that was probably when I tuned out for a minute. I totally, missed that. Then I started reading. He says you enter via elevator, and there's a bellhop, and it's all themed, and it just sounds very fun and kind of similar to the Adventurers Club. So,
yeah, it was. I got to go there, as I said in the previous episode, and it was a really cool bar, and they had the food too. So they kind of, instead of just having you milling about, there were tables, sort of on one side, and then you would. From there, you could view sort of like a large stage-ish area that like most of the stuff went on. I think at some point Frankenstein came out and the Wolfman. It had a lot of classic monsters in there, but still very Adventurers Clubby in feel.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Mitch, for writing in.
Guys, did you see the email that came from John Kunzer? He actually went back to episode 64, our Crescent Lake podcast episode there, and he says he happened upon an Antiques Roadshow episode featuring a clock. The appraiser specifically referred to the sculpture as dolphins. And, we've discussed why they look like fish and why they look like dolphins. Take a look at the photo, guys. I posted it on our channel there for this episode. They surprisingly look just like the dolphins holding up the, what are those, giant drinking fountains? I don't know what you call them.
I did
punch
see
bowls.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got that weird, they almost look like a carp face and then like a weird body.
Yeah.
A similar note, my daughter, who's now, what is she? She's in first grade. She just we saw it, and she goes, "What is that big building this past month?" And I said, "Oh, that's the Dolphin." And she goes, "Those aren't dolphins." Well, that's what it's called.
There you go. Very observant young child.
Yeah.
So,
I just had a quick summer trip up to the Biltmore Hotel in North Carolina, outside of Asheville, and they have several fountains there where they have that same kind of mythical dolphin shape in the fountains.
Really?
And in fact, the spigots from the what do you call the things that are on the side of the house that the rain falls into?
The gutters. The
gutters.
downspouts.
Yes. So the spigots from the gutters have that shape too, and the water comes out of their mouths. So very fancy.
it must have been something about that time period that they were enthralled with fish and dolphins. So cool.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of styles like that in some Italian fountains too. If there's like a Poseidon or something. I mean, let's face it. If you just made it a realistic looking fish, that would be terrible. So you give it a little bit of a little artistic interpretation, and it looks much cooler.
That's right.
Quick one here, but this one I have a task for this letter, this writer, this fan. Darryl Shoemaker. Darryl wrote us with some great footage from 1974. He has it on YouTube, but Darryl, we would love to restore this for you. So if you have the original footage, please get in touch with us. Either way, get in touch with us so we know if it's a yes or a no. Darryl's got some great shots of Fort Wilderness, fishing there, and that sounds very boring, but it's super exciting. And one of my favorites there, he's got a shot from the water of the Fort Wilderness Railroad going over the trestle. Very cool stuff. So Darryl, reach out to us and let us know if you have the actual film still, because we'd love to get that converted, give it the McCartney touch, the whole deal. So, all right, finally, we're going to wrap this up. Another Pleasure Island story from Robert C. I don't want to mispronounce your name, Robert. He says, just listen to the third part. He loves the whole series. He first experienced Pleasure Island as a 13-year-old and roller skated at Zephyr.
So jealous you got to do that. That's awesome.
I know. Didn't that only last a little while, right?
It did. Yeah, like I think 6 or 8 months. Very, very brief.
He says, then as a student at UCF from 97 to 2000, he had an annual pass and attended quite often. Man, I feel like if you were UCF in that era, like even before that, mid-90s, you probably just went, that was like your place to go if you were in college right there, right?
Oh my God, yeah. That would have been the best, other than Church Street Station, that would have been the best bar in Orlando by far.
Yeah. And then Brian, he mentioned you. He says he thinks you hit the nail right on the head regarding the Adventures Club at the end. He says, when I attended as a student at UCF, our purpose for going was drinking and having a good time, so we were regulars at the Beach Club and band Panama, Mannequins, and BET. Thursday nights were crazy, especially at Mannequins. Saw quite a bit there. So, Rob, thank you for that. We would love to hear if there's any stories you have about roller skating at the Zephyr Club, because, it's little nuggets, I think. Like Hal said, it's didn't last long, and any little hint of a memory you have there, whether it was, they stamped your hand, they only let you do 10 rotations, they went backwards. You remember, did you guys ever go to roller skating as a kid?
Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
There was
absolutely.
the guy would get on the thing, but we're going to let this be couples only.
We had Young's Regency skating rink and the United Skates of America in Northeast Philly. We went to all of them, yeah.
Like, hey, speed skaters only.
Yeah.
Speed only.
Skaters only, zigzag,
so, like, did they do that? Yeah, tandem.
They do that in the Office, right? Darryl and Andy and Who was the third one that went skating? I forget.
I feel like, yeah, you're right.
They went to Barnes & Noble to try to pick up girls at lunchtime, and then they went roller skating. I remember that episode. I do want to say to Robert, he was not alone in agreeing with my premise of why I thought the Adventurers Club didn't work in many of its years, but certainly in its final years. And so we heard from a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook and other places that they had a similar experience to mine, where they found it more off-putting than like, hey, isn't this cool?
For sure. Well, Rob, thanks a lot. Let us know if you've got any Zephyr stories, tidbits, details. We'd love to hear it because it's such a rare... I don't know how many of you are out there that have skated at Zephyr, so thank you for that. So if you'd like to get your message possibly on the show or a response from us, give us a shout-out, podcast@retrowdw.com. We'll take all emails. We get private messages on all the socials, and there's a good chance anything you send us could end up on the show, but we try to get to all of it. So thank you to everybody that sends something in. We definitely appreciate all the kind words and pictures and videos and everything.
All right, gentlemen. Last month, we actually had a giveaway, and we had, we could say retro WDW keyword was decade, because I had the additional decade book that was just hanging around here, or actually I purchased it and didn't realize I had another copy hanging around. So we do have a random winner, and congratulations to Jennifer Paulino. We'll be getting the copy of the Disney Decade out to you, and then you are going to feel obligated to buy the 15th anniversary book, and you're going to feel obligated to buy the 20th, and it probably will never end there, and you'll have a giant bookcase in a few years of old Disney books. So, but congratulations, Jennifer. Can't wait to get that out to you, and enjoy.
Life's the same, I'm moving in stereo. Life's the same, except for my shoes. Life's the same, you're shaking like travel.
All right, gentlemen, before we get to this month's topic, I don't know if our listeners have noticed, but tonight and for this episode, we're recording in stereo.
Well, it's widescreen radio.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So why don't we give everybody a little... I'm going to move you... Hold on. I'm going to put... Can you slide to the left channel for me?
Yeah, hang on. Here we go. I'm
okay.
going to start moving over right now. Almost there, and stop. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Now, how's on the left? And JT, could you move to the right? And Brian, why don't you go to the right as well? And I'll go to the left.
All right, Brian, grab my hand. We're going to the right.
All right.
Now, wait a second. This will be annoying because if I'm on the right and somebody's hard of hearing, they're only going to hear How. Or...
We'll blend back together. We're going to come back to the center room in a moment.
Okay,
I'm just trying to demonstrate here as How and I are on the left, right, How?
Yes, of course
and
we are.
Brian and JT, you guys are on the...
We're on the right. Hello.
That's right.
Hi.
Exactly. So we want to demonstrate we are recording this in stereo, and that's going to come...
Number nine. Bonus points to everybody who knows what that is.
So yeah, there's going to be a reason why we're recording this in stereo tonight, and it's going to go back. We're going to talk a little bit about How's head later on, the head that he carried around. But before we get to that, we're going to start to dive into...
Now, behind me is the Monster Sound Show. It's basically about sound effects.
So before we get into the Monster Sound Show, gentlemen, I have in front of me the Burn Bomb from 1989. I wanted to read you the description of Monster Sound Show. Are you ready, gentlemen? Guests will be brought up on stage to test their skills as film sound effects technicians. With predictably funny results, the audience will enjoy during the film's playback. That's all we had. But very, very, tight and put together.
Yes.
But this was written in 1988, pre-opening. And by the time we got to 1989, I have that one in here as well. He had a much more extensive write-up of 3 paragraphs, which is going to... Perfect segue, because that's what we're going to talk about, what the show was all about. I remember opening day. I think How we talked about your opening day, and I don't recall if you went into the Monster Sound Show. I know you did Superstar because you were first ones there, right?
Right.
And I don't know if you did.
I'm. You know what? There was enough time that day to do everything. I think I'm pretty sure we probably went to Superstars Television and then went right next door to Monster Sound Show.
That seemed to be the trend too when you were there.
Right.
You know what I mean? You'd go to one and then the other. It was just the thing to do.
You just knock them out.
People just stand in line out front for popcorn.
That's true.
There's always like a long line for popcorn out there.
That's right. So we are talking about opening day attraction. I remember going there in, the following October. So, but we are talking about the Monster Sound Show presented by Sony at the Sony Theater, which later on we're going to talk about how that name changed. Sony was the sponsor of both Superstar Television and the Monster Sound Show. They were both opening day attractions on May 1st, 1989. And the idea behind the Monster Sound Show, as you're going to find out, is this was about showing the importance of sound in film and cinema as well as television, and how what you see on the screen, or should I say what you hear from the screen, is not necessarily always what has been recorded by the actors and actresses. So it's a little bit different. Guys, I think we have to bring up this topic, as we've talked about before with video. I mean, here we are recording a podcast from 4 different locations, microphones. We're going to bring this thing all together. But you could not have fathomed this 20-some years ago, 30 years ago, doing this. So just like Superstar Television was amazing from the editing and the green screen standpoint that we can now do from our phones, nobody imagined the heck you could, the hell you would go through in terms of trying to edit audio. That was even harder to do, and reel to reel and tape and takes, and you couldn't visually see anything. Now, I'll call you an audiophile. I mean, maybe you're not up for crisp sound, but you are our audio expert here. So I'd love to hear your take a little bit on how this was a mystery back then, of how you got sound and effects into a movie or production.
Oh, absolutely. And this was before, or maybe right as some of the behind the scenes type shows were starting to come on to, I'm trying to remember what channel those ran on, a Discovery, I think. How this happened was, I think, probably largely unknown. The industry was starting to shift at that point from analog recording to digital recording. So there was a lot of new technology that was coming into play. For those of you who do not remember or are interested in getting into it now, when sound was originally first recorded, we, of course, way back, Edison started with the wax cylinder.
Yep.
And then we moved on to records and things like that. But kind of the de facto standard for recording audio during the probably the 1930s through the 1980s was by tape. Generally, it was magnetic tape. You could have multiple tracks depending on what your machine was. Anywhere from, 2 was one was kind of the standard. And then by the late 60s, it moved up to 2 tracks. And then by the 70s, they moved into 8, and then it went to 16 and then 24. And a big recording studio, would have a 24-track analog tape machine. I think it was recorded on something like 2-inch tape.
So if we wanted to do this podcast right now, we'd all have to be recording on our own track.
Right.
in the same room, or recording in separate rooms on the telephone on all single track that would then have to be somehow blended together on a multi-track tape.
Right. And, doing the remote stuff like we're doing now, I think the first time they started broaching that was in the 2000s. You could get an ISDN line, which was, quote unquote, super high speed at that point.
Well, maybe what we'll do next month, Hal, is we'll send cassette players to all of us.
Sure.
We'll get on the phone, just talk on the analog phone, and we'll record. We can hear each other, and then we can record into our actual.
Mine will be
cassette
TDKs.
Tape. Oh, are you going with the clear ones with the yellow spindles? I'm going. I'm going to go with.
Or Memorex.
Memorex.
Is it live? Or
is it live?
Yeah,
exactly. With the guy sitting in the chair with his hair blown back.
Yeah.
That an amplified human voice could shatter a glass is remarkable. That a cassette recording of that voice can shatter a glass is amazing. But after 1,000 plays, can the same cassette still shatter a glass? It can if it's totally new Memorex. Now even after 1,000 plays, reproduction so true, we ask, is it live Or is it Memorex?
There are generations of listeners at home right now saying, what are these guys talking about?
Right, reel to reel. Let's talk about that one too, right? And most of them were reel to reel, right? How at that point, before there really weren't audio cassettes in the industry until later on. It was reel to reel.
Yeah, you wouldn't have been able to record at the fidelity that you needed to. There were certainly some portable field recorders that used, I think, a 1/4-inch tape.
Mm-hmm.
So, like when, and actually this reminds me, I think the first time I ever actually saw somebody making sound effects for a movie was the making of Star Wars special that ran.
You're going to talk about the guy with the wrench on the wire, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that was mind blowing.
Yes.
As a kid.
We have, I grew up, no shock to anybody. I grew up behind power lines. When we moved out here, there were power lines run.
Did you grow up under power lines as a kid?
About a quarter
Explains a
mile
lot,
from
doesn't it?
From my house, and we used to play in the field under the power lines all the time. And they have those tension cables, and absolutely, if you like, bang on them, they make the Star Wars blaster sound.
He actually, this is the fact. I had this ready to go. The guy who is the sound designer, he founded backpacking in the Pocono Mountains in 1976. He hit the guy wire on an AM radio transmitter tower with a hammer, and that made the sound.
Wow. I biked under one once, and I had a little, like a weld mark that the paint had come off, and my finger was next to it, and every time I biked underneath it, a spark would jump from the weld spot to my finger. It was really, really hot. But anyway, we're not doing like Tesla experiments tonight.
Did it make a sound effect? Or?
It's not, I don't know. Maybe a little pop. It's just a little pop.
Emperor over here. Force lightning at people.
You were talking about analog, and then we went to digital. But
we went to digital.
But it was still on tape. It was digital tape.
It was. And as we moved into the 90s, you did start to see, the beginnings of using DAWs, digital audio workstations, where instead of doing your work on tape, you could do your work on a computer and start to put that stuff together. And some of that work started off on a synthesizer called the Synclavier, which I think came out in the late 1980s, where you could record things to the Synclavier and actually see a waveform and start to make your edits there to either shape a sound or put something together. But you had to have, you were in a very expensive studio if you're doing anything like that.
Right.
For the home person, if you had a Macintosh in probably like 88 or so, it's like you could start editing stuff together in Sound Edit this way. And kind of the nice thing about that time is sound, even though it uses kind of a limited amount of data compared to video, like the data needed for video is insane. In 1987, 1988 time frame. But I was out recording sound stations and out recording stuff in the parks, in the early 90s, using a mini disc player and a DAT recorder. And I was getting, 44.1 kilohertz, CD quality sound.
Mm-hmm.
You get a good microphone. It's like we were actually able to, as a home enthusiast, to be able to record stuff that still sounds phenomenal today. Like, we go back and we watch videos that we shot from that time and it looks like crap. But everything I recorded in audio still sounds just as good today as it did back then.
Yep.
So there were a lot of technical breakthroughs going on the sound side of things. It was very exciting. Super exciting time to be there.
We're not going to get into debate versus the warm sounds of analog versus the cool, harsh sounds of digital. That's another topic in another podcast. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to, with that little bit of history, we're going to rewind a little bit back to 1934. And this is when a gentleman by the name of Jimmy McDonald landed his job with Disney. And he became the sound effects master for Disney and other companies as well, working on projects like Dumbo, Rescuers, Peter Pan, Sleeping Beauty, and he developed all sorts of sound effects that were used from, maybe Dumbo blowing his trunk or a crackling fire or somebody walking. The one we're going to talk about is the dwarves walking across the floor in Snow White. In 1992, there was a nice set of called Cartoon Tracks Volume 1, released from the Hollywood Edge. I found it, and let's take a listen to a couple of his fun sound effects that he created here. So that gives you a little idea of what Jimmy was up to. And he did all this stuff from just household materials. That's the really cool thing. There was nothing special in the time frame here. Like, I think one of the famous ones, I don't know if he did it, but one of the famous sound effects that's out there from punching somebody is their cracking celery. So it sounds like a bones
Bone
crunching.
breaking?
Yeah. So they use celery for that. So
I recently saw an old interview with him, and it's interesting. He said a lot of the sound effects guys started out, they were all drummers because they understood rhythm and timing, but they also had a bunch of, stuff in their percussion kits.
Yeah.
Like slide whistles and things that got used in the early cartoons. So the studios, especially Disney at that time, actually did not have a sound effects department. So they would just hire people, one-off to come in and do sound effects for the cartoons. And that's how he ended up getting hired.
This is a shout out to our drummer friend Mike McGee, right, from Delta Ray. He's got that what does he call it? He has it the junk kit, right?
Oh yeah, that thing's amazing.
It's amazing. He's got all sorts of things on his drum and chains, and also can make a lot of sound. So all right, so by 1947, Walt was very busy with a lot of different things. There's some people say that his voice was getting hoarse from smoking. I don't know if we believe that or not, but anyway, at that point, McDonald took over doing the voice of Mickey Mouse, and he did that until 1976. He retired, but he was constantly being consulted. He leaned in, provided voices to Disney for a variety of films over subsequent years. And the really interesting thing is that I couldn't find anything where his work was actually credited. Almost everything listed for him is just that, yeah, he did it, but he was completely uncredited in the titles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is just, that just shows you, like, he was just so far behind the scenes of making a little crackling sound,
right?
That it just never made it into it.
So I believe he did both Gus and Jacques in Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to sit here and I'm trying to think of the other vocal performances. Oh, his first vocal performance was as, it was I'm trying to remember now. I can't remember the character. It was something, but they like blew air into his mouth, and then he formed the words and so it made the sound effect of like something. Oh, I remember. It was in this Mickey short, and there's it might have been Clock Cleaners, and there's a part where there's a spring that attacks Donald Duck, and Donald Duck starts talking to the spring, and then the spring starts talking back to him. And so he had this little mechanism with a spring, and then it would funnel the air into his mouth, and then he would form the words with his mouth, but not talk, and then let the air come out, and they would record that. Kind of how like that talk box works on the Peter Frampton recording.
Wow. That's right.
Which is actually, it is this tube with air in it that like blows the air into your mouth.
Didn't Aerosmith use that too? And was it Sweet Emotion? Yeah, they used that in Sweet Emotion.
That was
Oh yeah. He also was the voice of Chip for a while too, Chip and Dale, which is interesting. So, how you did some digging, because why are we talking about Jimmy? Well, Jimmy was a big part of the pre-show, and my understanding from the research you did was that those working on the Monster Sound Show wanted Jimmy to do it, didn't know what the format was, or how he would interact with them and talk about sound. Because how do you do that? And I apparently the David Letterman show called up Jimmy and said, "Hey, would you come on the show?" And Disney said, "Hey, just go do it. It'll give him some good practice, right?" And from what you found, Hal, was that they came back and they watched the clip and like, that's it. We got our pre-show.
They did everything they needed to do right there.
Yeah, and it really told the story of sound. So now what's really interesting, we're going to talk a little bit about the pre-show. We've got some great clips from it. So let's talk about the pre-show area before we talk about the actual film. You were in an outdoor queue at this point, kind of snake.
Do you like being hot, waiting for things?
Yes, exactly.
This is the perfect queue for you.
And what else do you have, gentlemen? Not only do you have that, you have the fear of that 20-inch monitor falling down on you that is suspended with safety chains, right? Because there were monitors galore. This was peak
Sony ones, right?
So absolutely, this was peak CRTs, right? I mean, you had them almost everything in this. Actually, I can't think of anything that didn't have TVs overhead, other than Indiana Jones, right? You had them in Superstar, you had them here, you had them in the Backlot Studio, you had them in the Walking Tour, you had them with Pee Wee Herman, you had them with Mel Gibson, everywhere. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere. So this was peak CRT, I guess we could say. So we start up the clip here, which is David Letterman. So what they did, this is really interesting. First of all, the Jimmy McDonald segment was aired officially on August 10th, 1988. That segment, part of the episode, I had to laugh at this, guys. Connie Chung, Abe Vigoda, and who else? His very first appearance on late night television with David Letterman, Tom Cruise. So he comes around again.
Wow.
So Jimmy McDonald came after Tom Cruise. In fact, Letterman has to shoo him move along a little bit because I think Tom Cruise was a little too winded. So anyway, the way that they did this was really interesting. Is that because that was a television show that aired a year prior, they needed a way to start the pre-show and end the pre-show. So I was looking carefully at it, and they went back to Letterman, and they got him in the same suit and the same tie and the same shirt as when he interviewed Jimmy, so that they could tie it seamlessly together and turn it into something, which was really, really interesting. So let's listen a little bit here as Mickey Mouse introduced Dave Letterman.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, David Letterman.
Well, that's a little hard on thanks, Mickey. You know, ladies and gentlemen, it just occurs to me that I'm a middle-aged college graduate, and I have now thanked a cartoon mouse.
All right, so Dave goes into this whole thing about how sound is really important. And Brian, what was one of the most famous things that Letterman did when he had his pencil? What would he do?
We threw them up in the ceiling. Oh, in his office, he threw them into the ceiling, into the drop ceiling. But he would always throw them behind him.
He'd sit there and drum on his coffee mug, right?
He would do that, but Brian's got it. He would chuck them behind him into, and behind him was always a city, and there was always a faux window there, and we would hear this. All right, so gentlemen, here's what happens. What David Letterman shtick would not be complete without a top 10 list, right? So if you're not familiar with David Letterman, he was on the Late Show with David Letterman, not the Tonight Show. What was it called? There was the Late Show, Late Night with David Letterman. One was aired on NBC. Then he went to CBS, and then the name changed or something like that. But Brian, you and I was huge fans. I think you were too. Like Letterman was where I tuned in. It was fantastic.
Love David Letterman.
After Carson, it was late. It was late. All right, so here we are. The top 10 good things about sound. You either haven't heard this, or how you probably haven't heard this in 30 years, right?
Yeah,
exactly. All right, number 10. It's entertaining to hear sweaty fat guy getting up from a beanbag chair. Number 9. Allows you to use a car horn to pick up your prom date. Number 8. Adds fun to knuckle cracking. Number 7. Brian, this one's for you because it's food related. Sizzler steakhouses would simply be called steakhouses. Number 6. Enhances effect when I scream at employees at the top of my lungs.
I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't say Sizzler. which was
there you go.
part of the commercials there.
It was, that's right. Sizzler. Number 5, adds fun to throwing a sack of marbles into a spin dryer. Number 4, if, like reptiles, we had to sort of sense vibrations in the earth, many more of us would get flattened trying to cross the interstate. Number 3, snap, crackle, and pop would otherwise be on the elf equivalent of welfare. Number 2, prevents me from becoming a singer. The number 1 good thing about sound is it adds fun to the job Jimmy McDonald has been doing for 53 years. So I watched that, and I used to be a big fan of David Letterman. I was like, this one fell flat. Other than the sizzler and maybe throwing marbles into a spin dryer, I even thought that the people getting flattened trying to cross the interstate was a little non-Disney-esque, but as we're going to hear in a second, Dave went a little bit off script towards the end of this too, when he's interviewing Jimmy, and I'm really surprised they actually let that in, but we'll get to that in a second. So do you guys remember that part?
I do, very much so.
Yeah. So again, they didn't really delete too much. In fact, I found the original broadcast of Jimmy McDonald on Letterman, and I found and we do. Thank you very much to Mark Hussey. We have the entire pre-show. He stood there with the camera, probably weighed about 10 pounds, shooting upward at one of the CRT screens. So we've got that full thing. So, and how actually, I do have to make a correction from our Magic Journeys episode.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to do this to you, but I have to take away your credit for filming Magic Journeys on a tripod. It was actually Mark.
Oh,
Hussey
fantastic!
As well.
All right.
So it wasn't you, but I had to make that correction, and
good.
This is the best part to do it, best time to do it. So
good. Well, then you can give him for not, recording it with the 2 eyeballs.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not your problem anymore. Yeah. How you were, you remember a very specific quote that Letterman blurted out towards the end of this, right? And it was kind of funny and off the center line from Disney. So
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing at the time, Letterman was, the 80s was a very straight-laced time for the most part.
Yeah.
The society was very conservative. That was, I think, part of the joke in Back to the Future was like how much the 1980s was really like the 1950s in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And Letterman kind of played the role of the iconoclast during that time.
Yeah.
His sarcasm, his attitude was really quite the opposite of what was, acceptable during that time. So, I think part of the reason why that pre-show, his top 10 list wasn't very funny, it was because I assume they really watered him down
Exactly.
to be palpable for the general audience that would be at Disney MGM.
Right.
To be fair, he did thousands of top 10 lists on his nightly show,
Absolutely.
and there were a lot of duds in there.
That's true.
There were. And I would not be surprised if his writers didn't write that, but the Disney writers wrote that.
Yep.
So
yep.
Probably that's also a big difference.
So here's a couple little clips from him talking and interviewing Jimmy McDonald. We'll put the full opening pre-show online as well.
So they were sneaking in, and I used this wallet.
Those are the dwarves walking across the floor.
Right, and it's a good, it's an empty wallet. I had no trouble getting these.
All right.
We have a bird whistle at the studio. I made a lot of them for big birds and little birds.
You designed the whistle yourself?
No, this is a regular drummer strap, but I built lots of them for baritone birds.
All right.
This is. There's water in there, and that gives you the flutter.
How many different kinds of birds can you do with that?
Oh, just as many as you want. They all sound alike. This was something I created for bugs and bees and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It wound up working for Evinrude and, the rescuers. This is for something else.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I'll have to blow
something
this
for
up.
back at the hotel later, maybe.
I'll try it with you. Okay, now if you want to do it very close and don't you want to lose, you might get a sliver in your finger.
Okay, thank you. Now what am I doing? I do this here?
That's right up close.
These are guys creeping through the woods,
No,
aren't
this
they?
will be a fire.
Oh, fire.
A fire that they had in Bambi.
Oh, the terrible fire in Bambi. Oh, I don't want to do this one.
Well, it was for Charlie.
I know, but it just was horrible.
And then this is the wind that was blowing. So if you get that real close, And I'll get him.
This is the one that killed Bambi's mother, isn't
That's
it?
right.
Yeah. I hope you're proud of yourself. The wind, oh my God, is blowing the fire out. So now, ladies and gentlemen, if you would kindly push and shove your way onto the next stop, it's called the Monster Sound Show. And I understand they have a lot of Foley effects. And after all, isn't that why you drove to Florida? But remember, if you bust anything, security guards in mouse suits will beat you senseless. Thank you. Enjoy your visit.
All right, and there it is, Hal. If you break anything, security guards in mouse suits will beat you senseless. And he actually, that was actually, it wasn't part of him introducing Jimmy. It was at the end. He's like, that's it. You're going in. Let's go into the theater. We're going to beat you. And they left it in, and they were cool with it. But it
got a big laugh.
It got a huge laugh, and it got your attention all of a sudden, because what do you do? You're going into the theater. So,
but that was kind of the Disney thing, right? What's it called? Help me out here.
Self-effacing?
Well, yeah. No. I mean, you're making fun of yourself. You're
yeah.
And that be kind. Obviously, a few years later with the Tiki Room and a variety of other attractions that even in Aladdin, was Iago starts singing "It's a Small World" and Jafar's like, "No, anything but that."
Right.
It was this whole kind of edgy late 80s, early 90s thing where it became hip to mock themselves.
That could have been the first step, with the second one being in the pre-show for the Muppets when Rizzo does the what do they know? They're tourists.
Yeah. I mean, there's just that really was kind of the vibe as they were shedding the we're the Jiminy Cricket, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella studio, and we're hip and with the times. We're cool cats.
That's true. And that probably from there to Touchstone, it's like that shift in tone from their movies, like bringing in Touchstone Pictures and Hollywood Pictures to do things other than G-rated family fare.
Self-deprecating was the word I was looking for, by the way. I couldn't think of it at the time. That's what I was looking for.
I felt like too that it was we knew how to go to a theme park. We knew what was expected. So when they threw those jokes out there, it was like, aha, I get that because I've been here before. It wasn't the first time the Magic Kingdom opened. It was, they were on their third park now, so people kind of knew what to expect, so they could throw those jokes out there.
And don't forget too, Letterman was just one of the many celebrities that were up in those CRTs and up in those television screens. I mean, so many of it. That again, this goes back. This is the core heart of MGM. So
before we let David Letterman go away, I have a speculation.
Okay.
And that speculation is that his involvement setting this up with the Monster Sound Show actually led to Disney striking a deal with his production company, Worldwide Pants.
That's right, yeah.
Because it was announced shortly after this that Disney was trying to acquire, get people to work with them and do different things, and they struck, I think, like a 10-picture deal or something with them, of which nothing was ever produced.
Really? But that was but that's his company. I mean, the timing seems right, and why not? You're in talks with it. Hey, while we're here, let's
nothing like a lucrative development deal that produces nothing.
Nothing.
Here, let's give you a pile of money and you never do anything for it.
Well, like Magic Underground.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with his cameo appearance in Cabin Boy, which was a Touchstone production. Maybe, not sure, but somehow I have a feeling that there's an interconnection here. That's perhaps how the introduction was made that got made that deal come together.
And this was 89, right?
Yes.
Isn't that what the year? Yeah, because I mean his agent was Ovitz, and Ovitz and Eisner were close. Ovitz is the one that engineered his move to CBS.
Right.
All right. Well, Letterman is getting us into the theater.
Well, hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Darryl, and I'd like to welcome you to the Disney MGM Sound Effects Studios, where today we're going to present the Monster Sound Show.
This I found really interesting. That the turnover with the show took about 15 minutes. So you do the math on the turnover. It only sat 270 people. So the turnover on this was maybe 1,000 per hour if you could get squeak 4 shows. Some things I read said that it took 20 minutes. So this wasn't, towards its end, it wasn't hugely popular, but it was in the beginning, but it just really didn't suck the crowds. Superstar, that was a lot bigger. How I think that took 700 maybe at a time, a swath.
Okay.
Right, somewhere in there, and
Yeah.
you had like 200. It was a very, very small theater, so I'll have to check. Maybe it's a little less than 700, probably at least double. But all right, so we go inside the theater. I forget how many rows there was, but on the right side is a sound booth with the audio engineer. And today, we do have an audio engineer tonight, guys. His name is Dave. So say hi to Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave. All right, there we go. Good. And he had enough equipment. He's got enough equipment by him tonight, too, to edit an entire motion picture, let alone we're only doing a 5-minute film with like 30 sound effects. But, he's in the studio for us.
Does he have
Are
a
you
dog?
pushing the
There's a
dog
sound
button?
effect now.
Yes, that's actually perfect, right? Dave is playing the sound of dogs in the background here. So, and his job is to be in the studio to record that. In the stage, right in the center, is a big white movie screen. Not widescreen, kids. This is 4x3, which is basically a rectangle, a very narrow rectangle, square, if you will. And it's flanked by 4 different stations where.
I think you want to call that Academy format, Todd. Let's be
Academy format.
Let's
Okay,
be.
all right. We're going to be perfect. NTSC 4x3. And we got 4 stations where the sound effects are going to be made that we're going to be doing here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how that comes into play. However, our host first has to tell us about where we are. And he wants us all to say Monster Sound Show on the count of 3. All right, guys. So I want to make sure we get this right. And Dave, you make sure you get this on tape. All right. On the count of 3, gentlemen, I want to say on my cue, Monster Sound Show. Okay. 1,
Okay.
2, 3.
Monster Sound Show.
You got that, Dave?
Sure did. Would you like to hear it?
I sure would. We're here to talk about the
Monster Sound Show.
All right, good. So we've got that laid. We got our first track laid here for the show. Now we need some volunteers. Now, all 4 of us are going to be volunteers tonight. We unfortunately can't replicate this completely, but we're all going to have pseudo jobs to do. But what I couldn't find how, and I can't remember how the volunteers were picked. I saw one video online where they actually plucked them out of the audience after they were already in. Another one seemed to have, just kind of pluck people out as they were filing into the. Do you remember any part of that?
I'm trying to remember. I want to say either that first day or on a subsequent day. I believe they picked Hoot Gibson out of the audience to do one of the things.
Okay.
And I think they pulled him. I don't think they pre-screened and pulled someone out before the show started out in the queue like they did with Superstar Television. I think they just kind of grabbed people out of the theater.
Okay.
As you were in there.
Because there really wasn't much prep beyond what they told you on stage anyway.
No, which
Right.
as you will get to, I'm sure,
Yes.
is
part of the reason.
Is part of the thing, yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So we are going to pick 4 people. The 4 of us will be our Foley artists for tonight. Why Foley? And I just want to let you know, it is no relation to Matt Foley. And Jack Foley did not live in a van down by the river. Okay?
We're Axel Foley.
Yeah, or Axel Foley. Exactly. Just wanted to get that straight.
My name is Matt Foley, and I am a motivational speaker.
So Jack Foley, born in 1891, passed away in 1967, was the developer of a lot of different sound effects that were used in filmmaking. And he developed all these different methods, performing them live in a synchronous way with the picture during post-production. So he'd watch it and, make people, every punch would be that celery crack or the crackling fire or something. So as a nod to him, everybody who performs sound effects are called Foley artists. And where you perform your artistry, if you will, is on the Foley stage, and you have Foley devices. So everything has this Foley thing. And he worked for Universal as well, gentlemen. So maybe he would have been right down the road if he was around. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen here. We've got these 4 volunteers. Now, all 4 of us are now standing at these 4 sound effect stations. We still don't know what we're going to be doing, right? We have no clue. So the MC up there says that we've produced a short 4-minute film starring none other than, who would you get to do a late 80s here? Who would you get to do a short?
Patrick Swayze.
We didn't use him. Again, star-studded.
I know the answer. So
go for it, Brian.
A short.
A short, yes. It's a 4-minute
short film.
Martin Short.
I must say.
And Chevy Chase. So, I mean, wow, again, MGM was star-packed, right?
That's 2 of the 3 Amigos.
That's right. When did the 3 Amigos come out? When was that?
1987.
Okay, so it was after. Okay. All right.
I just watched it this weekend, so it was 86 or 87.
It's a funny film.
December 12th, 1986.
There we go. Thank you.
Right there.
Okay.
There goes the dynamite.
Thank you, because I was trying to figure out why they would put those 2 guys together, and I couldn't. Like, for the life of me, I still haven't seen 3 Amigos, so I didn't make the connection.
So I read Martin Short's book last week. His book called "I Must Say," which is what his catchphrase when he was Ed Grimley. He was obsessed with Pat Sajak in The Wheel of Fortune. And he talks about being cast in that film, and him and Chevy being friends, and Steve Martin's one of his best friends. So, but absolutely worth your time. It was a mainstay of cable in the 80s.
Oh yeah,
and I crack up every time they shoot the Invisible Swordsman.
It's one of Amy's favorite movies, and Brian, she's seen it a plethora of times. So
I've seen it a plethora of times.
Exactly. I was wondering, he's laughing.
Seen it a plethora of times.
Yes, you have a plethora. Jefe, what is a plethora? Why, guapo? Well, you told me I have a plethora, and I just would like to know if you know what a plethora is. I would not like to think that a person would tell someone he has a plethora and find out that that person has no idea what it means to have a plethora.
See, I think what I saw right before this was him in Inner Space, which was delightful.
Oh. So Inner Space was right after. It was right after this one.
Oh, okay.
And a terrific film, both very underrated.
Yes. So what we're saying here is that you should go watch this if you haven't after we talk about this. And if you liked Body Wars at Epcot, go see Inner Space.
Inner Space is great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great film.
There probably would not have been Body Wars had Inner Space not. Yes. Inner Space took the Fantastic Voyage concept and turned it into a comedy. It was brilliant. And I think that popularity made Body Wars happen.
I didn't know John Landis directed 3 Amigos.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the book covers, there's like a whole chapter on 3 Amigos, and it's fascinating. I mean, it really is fascinating to listen to the stories of the production, and because it was supposed to be it was originally 4 different casts. It was originally John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, and then it became a second set. John Candy was too fat to fit on the horses, so he suggested Martin Short replace him in the cast, and that's how Martin Short got the job. And it really is.
Amigos falling from the sky.
Yeah.
Now, tonight, gentlemen, right before we came, I was watching a little TV. Martin Short and Steve Martin are in a new show called Only Murders in the Building. So we can get all 3 Amigos together. You watch this, you watch 3 Amigos, you watch Inner Space, you watch that. You got kind of the whole thing. But anyway, let's talk about this 4-minute short. I'm going to describe the movie here because I'm not going to describe it 3 times to save you guys because we just can't do this, right? This is something you have to see to understand. But I'm going to describe the movie real quickly here. It took 4 minutes. It's probably going to take me about 4 minutes to describe. But you need to know the film because you have to think about this in the sense that in a moment, we're going to try to put the sound effects into the film, right? So you got to think how complicated this film is. So I don't know if this is a mansion or it's a hotel. Is it stormy
old spooky
night?
House.
Old spooky house. It's playing more music is playing. And a man, as we find out, his name is Mr. Lucky, which is Chevy Chase. He's carrying an umbrella and he's whistling zippity-doo-dah. And he almost trips and then says, whoops. He knocks on a door that says solicitor's welcome. And we cut to inside where Simon, or in this case, it's Martin Short, he's reading the book Death of a Salesman. So you can obviously see where this is going, right? And then they show different salesmen around the room who have unfortunately passed away through a brush through his head. One's, I think, got a book squashed his head together. And he kind of walks like Igor from Young Frankenstein, and he's going to answer the door and looks through the peephole, and he gets really excited that there's a salesman so he can kill another one. So he pulls on this rope to open a door, and then Mr. Lucky, Chevy Chase, walks in and says, "Hello, anybody home?" And then he accidentally, with his umbrella, puts it down. He puts it on Simon's foot, and he lets go of the rope, and the chandelier comes crashing to the ground that was supposed to fall onto Mr. Lucky. So he announces that he's with Lucky Life Insurance, goes through some bats, enters the library, says it's a nice place. There's a statue of a dog on a fireplace, taps it on the head, and he says, "Hi, Pooch." It barks, it knocks off the mantle, and then a foghorn goes off, and the secret passes, and the bookshelf revolves around and reveals Simon holding a bomb and a lighter. Now, we're just about halfway through the movie, a little more. Think about all the sound effects you got to put into this. There's revolving doors, there's bombs, there's things, So Simon burns his hand and doesn't realize that a candle has ignited the fuse on his bomb. So Mr. Lucky pulls a rope, activates the foghorn sound again, and causes the bookshelf with Simon again to rotate around. And then the famous Goofy yell is heard as he disappears with the lit bomb as the bookshelf rotates. Then, to end here, we have Mr. Lucky turns around and doesn't realize what happens, still calling out, "Hello, hello." He remarks that no one's there when the bomb explodes. He walks out of the house unharmed and still humming Zippity-Doo-Dah. He then realizes he forgot to leave a business card, looks for one side of his coat, and as he leaves the house, lightning strikes a tree that Mr. Simon is now sitting in. Mr. Lucky gets hit with the branch comes down crashing, and Mr. Lucky gives Simon his business card, which reads, "Lucky Life Insurance, accidents are our policy." End scene, end movie, end clip, end short. There's a lot to unpack there, and that's purposeful.
And it happens quickly.
It does. It is. And I've seen it a number of times when we're seeing it in person, and it's done well. It has quick edits, quick need for sound effects. All right. So we got 4 volunteers now setting up here, and we've been told that there's over 100 sound effects in the film alone. You're going to have to reproduce a handful, us, the volunteers. So here's what we got. Brian and gentlemen, I gave you a shopping list, right, before we recorded. I'm going to just go over the shopping list and make sure we have it here. Brian, you were supposed to bring tonight 1 stalk of reeds, a slide whistle, and 2 balloons. You got those?
I brought marshmallows, graham crackers, and Hershey bars.
Those will do fine. The snap of the Hershey bar might not be... But that's all right. It kind of makes a hissing sound when you break it. That's fine. Hal, you had a 55-gallon drum, a canvas sheet, and 3 feet of 250-pound chain.
Yes. And now I wrapped the chain around the drum.
Yeah.
And then I put it on sort of a spindle, so that way when I turn it. Is that kind of where you're going for?
I think we're going to get there.
Okay, good.
All right. And then JT, you had a 40-pound bag of pea gravel, 1 cubic yard of mulch, and a paper towel roll. You got those?
I have the gravel and I have a stake to punch, so it sounds like Indiana Jones. That's
excellent. Either that or celery. One will work. So, all right. Well, Hal, you are going to be station 1 with that equipment. It's only part of it, but here's what you're going to be responsible for. And again, this is what the MC or the host or cast member is telling Hal in a very quick voice. You're going to be in charge with the rain and thunder, the crashing chandelier, sliding peephole, the crackling fire, doorknobs and doors closing, and the sliding library on doors. Now, that's not all in one little place. They're going to make Hal run or jump or slide from technique to technique. And what we have here is the rain and thunder is there's like I think that was a rain stick. Thunder was a big metal sheet suspended. The chandelier was literally like a wired chandelier in a box that they could hoist up, and then when you pulled something out, it would crash inside the box. Crackling fire, you had the Jimmy McDonald reeds. Doorknobs and doors closing were actually little doors, and then sliding library doors were little doors that you slide back and forth. How, you got all that?
Yeah, and it was really cool because they actually had they had microphones set up pointing towards all these things, so they could actually record this live. They didn't do a canned version. Like, they actually recorded these sounds as the people were making them to play back.
Exactly. All right. Station 4, I'm going to send that over to JT. Actually, no, I'm sorry, JT. You're station 3. We're going to come back to 2 in a moment. You have to walk on 4 different surfaces that include gravel, cement, marble, wood, and you are also responsible for additional sounds: closing books, striking matches, bats flying, and when Mr. Lucky falls down. You got all that?
Got it.
Okay, so you got to be quick. It's going to go fast. Now, what you're probably trying to figure out here, or coming to the conclusion, none of these effects were done in an order, and they were never... See, we got another effect in the background here tonight, too. That right on cue. I'm leaving it in. We're not going to edit the dog out. It's perfect.
What's funny is you're just saying that the host would list these things like you're doing it, and it's some guy from Nebraska that's like, all right, I got it, wait, and then it just keeps going. He goes, and then the host will go, all right, good, next.
Exactly. It was just purposefully quick, and it wasn't like Hal could sit there and go, okay, doorknob, and then wait for they purposely had it so that the 4 volunteers, their sound effects were always coming up at random times. That's the magic of this that worked really well. So, Brian, I'm going to give you Hal's creation in Station 4. You're going to create the wind, the rotating bookcase sound, squeaking gate, squeaking door, an umbrella in Simon's foot, the chiming clock, the taps on the dog's head, and the explosion. Got it?
Sure, Todd.
He'll take care of it. And I will walk up to Station 2, so we'll go back over to Station 2 here. This person controls an electronic console, and you think, oh, this is the easiest because all you got to do is press buttons, right? Barking dog, broken glass, foghorn, the goofy yell. And also, he had to voice all of Simon's groans, grunts, all different things. I have to say that we're going to talk about, I found one on YouTube where the guy just ad-libbed and people were cracking up. He's like, I got to go over here. I got to do this. So when people got into it, this could be really, really fun, right? It could be really fun. All right. And then
what did they do? Sorry. What did they do if somebody they volunteered and they was anybody intentionally ruining it? You know what I mean? You go up there and you just are like, whatever. I just wonder if they had a backup plan.
I never saw it. I mean, maybe they would mute that track. I mean, I don't know. Dave in the control booth could tell us what he might do, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
he's shaking his head no. He's not going to divulge any of those secrets, JT. Sorry. All right, and there's one more. We need one more station, which is the rest of the audience. And a cue card is going to come up at some point, and you guys all, and we have to yell, look out. All right, that is our job as the audience to do that. And I know we're also the volunteers tonight too. So, all right. So what do we do now? 4 of us, we're all at our station. We saw the film once as it was, with all the Hollywood sound effects added. Now the 4 of us, they're going to ask for complete silence, except for the cue card in the theater. And they're going to play the film again. This time it's in complete silence. I recall that there were a few few mild ones, like Mr. Lucky's voice. Nobody had to do that. So you hear, so there's a couple cues so that you get an idea what's going on. And we have to run around now and try to hit all these buttons and make all these sounds at the right time. And this is what made it really fun, because by picking, as Hal pointed out earlier, by just bringing these people up randomly without knowing what they were doing, throw them on stage, make them watch something they don't know what to remember, and then you tell them what they're going to have to do, and then just throw it at them 35 seconds to a minute later. What ensues is a hilarious film, as we're going to talk about in a second, that is all out of whack. So they play the film with only a few sound effects like Mr. Lucky's voice, and the recording starts. So Dave is going to now do his stuff in the studio. But gentlemen, we're getting towards the end of that film. We're working really hard on these. I'm holding up that cue card. We need to yell.
Look out.
Look out.
On my cue, we missed Brian.
Right.
1, 2, 3. Look
out.
out.
and they would leave it if you screwed up like
that.
Yeah. They would complete, the first time I saw it, the Monster Sound Show was all over the place at the beginning.
So, and sometimes when they record that, there's a little kid that's 3 seconds later, look out. Yes. And, they left it in, so it was hard. All right, so now we've got our take. Dave's going to set this all up for us, and we're going to talk about, why sound is so important in the motion picture industry and everything like that. And now they replay the film with all the sound effects that we have recorded at the appropriate time. Dave is not fixing it. So if you pressed it 3 seconds early or 2 seconds late, that's the way that it was recorded. And what basically happens is that very rarely is there anything that is in sync. I think the only thing that probably is good is that was generally pretty good was the gentleman or was the person who was doing Simon's voice, because they could always kind of look up and just make funny noises. And but what did you guys see when you were there?
I loved how the I recall as the host, he'd go around. You ever have to tell somebody to do something while you're taking an important phone call? That's kind of how he was acting. Like
Exactly.
He's pointing at people in a silent way and running around the room and like directing them, but he's not saying anything.
Sometimes I think he'd be like, the rain, do the rain. Like he would tell people what to do because they were missing out on stuff. Yeah.
And sometimes people were so engrossed in doing one sound effect that they'd completely forget about the others.
I always thought the funniest thing is when the chandelier would drop and then that sound would come out like 5 seconds later.
Always delayed.
It was always delayed.
I mean, the whole attraction was set up so that the fan version, the participant version would be slightly asunder.
Yeah.
And out of sync. And that's where the hilarity ensues. I mean, if they nailed it, there would be nothing funny about it.
Exactly.
Right. And if this attraction lasted a few years longer, we would have whole groups of people going in there with the timing perfect, and they'd make a perfect movie and ruin it for us.
Brian's shaking his head. It's just, the spiel. All right, why don't you come up here and just do it? And there was a reason for the audience participation and yelling, Look out! Mr. Lucky looks at the camera, and he jumps out of the way. The branch falls behind him, and he looks and says, "Thank you." And he steps over the fallen tree branch. So by us participating, we save Mr. Lucky from getting crushed by that tree branch. And he does still give his business card to Simon. And I do not know if he ever got any insurance for that place, but I have to find out. So, and that was it. I mean, you were out. Dave did a rap, and thank you for visiting the
Monster Sound Show.
Enjoy your day here at the Disney MGM Studios. You were up and out in 15 minutes. It took us nearly an hour to explain it, but that wasn't all that was there for, right? We had more to do because before the advent of gift shops at the exit, we had other exciting things to do. So as you came out of the theater, you were shuffled into the Soundworks post-show, and you had a couple different things here. And I tried to find photos and videos of people doing these things, and I vaguely remember there's not much of Soundworks at all. So I'm going to go through them here. We're going to talk about Sound Stations last because I know Hal is itching. I'm going to let him explain that one. So,
a question: do you think it's Soundworks because of ImageWorks? Is that a?
I was thinking the same thing. It definitely works. No pun intended. So, all right. So we had a couple different stations here. We had Eerie Encounters, and you would try to reproduce the flying saucer effect from the film Forbidden Planet. I don't know if this was one of those.
Yeah, it was a theremin.
Oh, they had a theremin
basically.
Going.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was it.
So you had your hand over the different thing and you'd play a clip for like 20 seconds or something.
So there was a style of theremin that appeared in. I remember the Orlando Science Center had one too. Oh no, I'm sorry, take it back. It wasn't the Orlando Science Center. Oh no, it was. I'm sorry. I was thinking it was maybe Mystery Fun. No, it was Mystery Funhouse. It wasn't. Or there might have been one at the Orlando Science Center.
Funhouse.
Come back here with Mark.
Instead of the two antennas, like the round one on one side and then a tall pole antenna, there was usually like two pieces of metal on the front of a plywood front, and then as you put your hands up closer to those two pieces of metal, flat pieces like a triangle, and one was usually like a triangle and the other was a circle, so you could kind of visually differentiate them. You'd get the sound. So if you've never had the pleasure of playing a theremin, one side controls the pitch. So as you get closer to it, the sound goes higher. It typically plays just a pure sine wave. and the other side controls the volume. So it makes very nice squeaky, squonky sounds.
So that was why I don't recall trying that one, but I do remember the next two. Movie mimics. You could try to dub the voice of Roger Rabbit into a clip.
Penny, you go for the cops. I'm gonna save my wife.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
So these were, again, big televisions. They were embedded into a console. You would sit down or stand there, and you were supposed to.
Yep.
Yeah, they were probably laser discs, and they would do the recording and play it back. Very complicated for the time. So it was
actually
pretty amazing.
Kind of remarkable if you think about the fact that they had a digital recording system that could capture what you were doing, synchronize it, and play it back again the second time. That would have been a sophisticated thing for that time.
And the idea was that you were supposed to do it once and move on. I think what also happened in Soundworks, a lot of these kiosks would get overloaded with people. I'm going to do it again, Daddy. I'm going to do it again. So you had to wait until the show kind of cleared out a little bit. But with every 15 minutes, you just had another dump of people coming in.
Right.
It was sometimes a little hard to get into that. So I forget what scene it was in Roger Rabbit. I almost want to say it was with Benny the Cab, but I could be wrong. There was touch tunes where you could try to imitate the gallop of the Headless Horseman's horse in Ichabod Crane's scene from Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And I think they had tied to cables, there were these plastic cups, and you would and record it. Right? Isn't that what it was?
Kind of like the coconut thing, I think.
What? Ridden on a horse? Yes. You're using coconuts. What? You've got 2 empty halves of coconut and you're banging them together. So?
Realistically, yeah, that's what it was. So they were tied to cables, and there was, I think, sort of like a flat metal piece or something, and then you would do the...
And Jimmy McDonald told us the right way to do it.
Oh, have these or half coconuts for horses? You think horses are easy to do. When they walk, it's left, right, left. And so they walk like this. Then they, when they go into a lope, they go both right, left, and that gets you mixed up. And when they walk, they do this, and then they get into a gallop. A lot of them make 3-legged horses. And I make 4 legs.
So Hal, I'm going to let you talk about Sensations next, because it was really, really cool. You understand the best. You recorded it. We're going to play a little bit here because I feel like a little, I need my ears lowered. So why don't you tell a little bit of that, and then we'll get to that in a second.
Sure. So Sound Stations was I'll describe the experience first. So there were, I think, 6 or 8 doors along the wall of the interior of the post show area. They had sort of like a circle, kind of like a porthole window, so you could kind of peer in. And then there was like a double light thing where the green light on the top and a red light on the bottom. And if the green light was on, then the room was occupied. If the red light was on, then the room was occupied. If the green light was on, then it was not occupied.
So basically red now would mean that there's COVID inside, and green is cleaned. Okay. Got it.
So, if you've ever, been at a school, a lot of times they have sort of like soundproof, rooms that you can go into with sort of big heavy doors. And so that's what this was. These were little soundproof rooms. So the sound from the outside couldn't penetrate it. And then also if there were sounds on the inside, they wouldn't come out. So you'd open the door, and there was kind of like a bench couch seat inside with, I think, 4 sets of headphones. And a big button that you'd push on the opposite side of the little booth to like get things started. So you'd go settle down into your booth, put on these headphones, push the button, and the lights would kind of dim, and then you would start to hear a lady talk to you. How all of this worked is, I think it was AKG was the first company to come up with this. They developed the first, well, I don't know if it's the first, but they developed really nice binaural microphones. So binaural meaning 2 microphones, so that way it's trying to record the same way that your ears hear. And they actually constructed, this plastic head, and the plastic head actually had like realistic ears on it. And supposedly, they created like the same kind of channels that are inside of your head that the sound has to travel in order to get into your eardrum. And then they put, tiny little microphones where your eardrums would be. And the upshot of all this is that, they could set up this head and make audio recordings, and it would be just like somebody was in the room talking to you, because the sound would be reaching your ear, the two different ears at the different times, just like if someone was talking to you. So if somebody is standing over to your right-hand side, the sound first reaches your right ear and registers, and then the sound milliseconds later reaches your left ear. But that gives your brain enough information to know that the person is standing over on the right-hand side.
And it's not only, if we think about sound waves as water waves for a moment, right? It's not only the time it takes, it's how that wave changes when it gets to your ear on the other side. It has to go around your head. The wave changes and forms and comes back around your head. So the sound, while minutely distorted, that plus the delay gives us what we know as, you could call it human, hearing, but that's the three-dimensional sound that we hear as humans.
Right.
So amazing to think that somebody like this is so simple. It's like 3D for audio. That's what it is.
And I think the original ticket price on this microphone was about $20,000. I went back and did some research at the time, but I was personally fascinated by this process and how this worked, and so I put together my own budget version using a styrofoam head that I bought at a secondhand store, and two slim microphones from Radio Shack that I could carve out a way for them. Like I could basically carve out a rectangle on the side of the head and then slip these microphones in. And then
Did you put like Halloween ears on them by any chance?
No. Okay. I didn't bother to replicate that, because what I found in my tests is, at least if you were recording fairly close up, you didn't really need the ear things. It worked well enough that I was able to replicate a lot of the close-up effects of the show on my own. And the thing that was sort of interesting about it, and I think this is the reason why you did a lot of these effects, the close-up effects in the show, is the close-up stuff worked much, much better than far away.
Right,
so, if somebody was standing like 6 feet in front of you, it's like you didn't get as much of that feeling of dimensionality as if somebody was, standing right behind you and whispering in your ear or doing some scissors. But if you did that, it absolutely sounded exactly like it did in that show.
Well, why don't we, do you want to do that trim now? Should we get that haircut?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's get a little haircut.
R.J. McBean's office, Hampton speaking. Yes?
May I? Be my guest. Suddenly, a nomad's arrow flies through the air and whizzes by your turban. Oh, wait a minute. You don't have a turban. Here. This will have to do. A newspaper.
Hi, Hampton. Hi, RJ.
Nice to see you, Mickey.
Boy, you've really earned your ears. Gosh, they look swell. Well, gotta go. Lots of things to do,
Well, I'd say you're definitely part of the family now, RJ.
I remember standing there, and the reason how you're talking about with the booth is because you couldn't replicate this in a theater because there's too much ambient noise, there's too much way for that audio to bounce around. So going into this deadened room.
Were they speakers in that room?
No, there were headphones.
There's headphones.
Yeah, you put headphones on.
But that was the only way to do it, right? You had to be in this deadened room, have your headphones on, and direct it in. Is there any way? I don't think there is any way to really ever do it in a room, or maybe you could do it in a small room. But again, there's just too much audio bounce. It's like I said, like waves in a pool. You need that because you recorded it in the eardrum. That's where you need it.
Yeah, ironically, they did end up using this system, not only in Alien Encounter, but also briefly when they redid Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln in Disneyland. And they actually did the haircutting gag
Did they really?
Yeah.
Abe Lincoln gives you a haircut.
Yeah.
Where did they do
accurate.
the speakers for that? Did they embed them in like the back of the seat?
They gave you headphones. I think.
You did have
I don't
headphones.
remember if I assume they were wireless. I never got to experience that version of the show myself. But yeah, they tried. I think the idea was they wanted to make you feel like you were a young soldier that was going to go off to fight in the war, and so you were. Eventually, you were watching Lincoln give the Gettysburg speech.
Well,
so
I
there's
think we could really enhance the American adventure here. We could be riveting. We could be a Civil War soldier, right?
Yeah.
And let's not forget you need a haircut before you go out.
That's
there.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that is the best part. So,
well,
I always find these you put these headphones on, and I mean, you might be able to create this, and you guys might tell me why this is. I always feel like my ears are tickling. Like when it's like these weird sounds that move around your head, like it does something weird to my ears, and I don't understand why. It's like stereo, especially the binaural stuff. It's weird. It does odd things when it moves around, like you don't expect it to.
I also find that those types of, like this one at Sound Stations, I find that the treble, the high end frequencies are really cranked up to give it a little more of that crispness, and maybe that's what you're hearing, JT. And that there's also a lot of those high ends that might be inaudible to you, but are actually resonating in your your eardrum that you can't hear, giving you that tickling effect. And also,
The
JT, if you get a haircut again, it does tickle a little bit in the back of your neck. Okay.
The soundproof room's always interested me too. We did a tour one year in high school of Audio Technica, the microphone people, and they took us into a room that was a high end. Like, I mean, it had all the triangles on the wall and all the sound deadening, and you go inside. And these sound booths were a minor version of that. It's just dead.
Yeah.
The sound doesn't travel. There's just nothing. It's so weird. Like, that's another trick on your ears. Like, you're just like, wait, why is it so quiet? And I say something and it doesn't go anywhere.
I think after this recording, though, the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society might send you a lot of those egg cartons. We can put them up all in our offices here, and I won't be able to hear the dog. So...
Do you remember in the first version of Test Track, JT, when you would walk into the sound deadened room?
Yes, that did have that. Yeah, in the queue, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was spooky. It really worked well.
Yeah.
Because you're used to the queue noise and all the sounds and all the crash tests, and then it's just like nothing.
Yeah. I've been in places, too, where the room isn't deadened, but if you go close enough to a wall, it's an absorbent wall, and there's nothing in your right ear, but your left is hearing. So there's some places like that. So.
This could really work, I feel like, somewhere in Epcot nowadays. If you're looking at like a wing of ImageWorks or something like that, it's such a neat. I don't know. It's neat to me. It's a neat concept.
Except nobody's going to want to pick up headphones and put them on after.
No. But I mean, like, send me into a big, massive room with no sound. I don't know. Something cool.
Well, everybody's got their own, phone now.
That's right.
With, I guess if you bring your earbuds with you or your Beats or whatever, then maybe.
Can you imagine that before the show starts? We want everybody to sync their Bluetooth to this code. Everybody pair. Oh wait, hold on. We don't have a blue light on all the chairs yet.
There was another place that did use this at Epcot though, which was at the Life and Health Pavilion. There was another binaural audio station, and it would play sounds, and you had to guess what the sound was. So there was this thing that sounded like rain, but it was really bacon sizzling.
Hello, and welcome to our little game of hearing that we call Audio Antics. I'm going to create some environments using sounds that happen all around you. Only I'm going to include some familiar sounds you may think belong in each scene, but really don't. Using only your sense of hearing, let's just see, hear, if you can guess what's wrong with each picture. And thunder. And of course, frying bacon. Ow! Hot! Now that you have the idea, let's try another one. Okay, time for one last audio antic. This one's named, I Saw It in the Jungle. I call this one, I Saw It in the Jungle, because the sound of that bird is done with a saw. sure was fun playing audio antics with you. But before you go, I'd like to give you a nice round of applause. No, not River Rapids. I said applause. Bravo. Thanks for stopping by. Drop in again sometime and we'll see what you can hear.
Yeah, if you ever see pictures of these things that look like giant headphones,
yeah,
in the Wonders of Life,
you would stand
it's
between
that
them,
big,
right?
It's huge, and we're not going to get into it now today. But that the next version of the show, Drew Carey, it was all based on this. You had the headphones
wasn't the
on.
next version, JT.
What?
No. So that was a great segue. The
Monster Sound Show
actually changed formats on July 1st, 1997. It became the ABC Sound Studio, and it featured Disney's One Saturday Morning lineup. So instead of 4 guests, 7 guests were chosen to create sound effects for 101 Dalmatians, the series. I watched some clips on that. I never saw it in person. And this was the first time that they allowed children to go up, because before it was always adults. Maybe you might get a late teen up there with the Monster Sound Show. It was interesting. Not only did they add children there, I find this interesting, gentlemen, is that the live action film, as we said, it was replaced by 101 Dalmatians, the series. It was only a 45-second cartoon clip.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So think about the turnover, man. You're just like moving these people through. Or maybe they, with 7 people up there, maybe they did 2 or 3 different clips, but it was no longer this 15 to 20 minute show. It did, that closed 2 years later on February 20th, 1999. And it changed to Sound Dangerous, starring Drew Carey at that point, and that ran from April 22nd, 1999 to May 18th, 2012. So I didn't realize that ran for 13 years, and JT is going to write us an episode on Sounds Dangerous, too. And gentlemen,
there was one other thing in Soundworks that two other brief things that I want to mention in Soundworks, because it ties back to Jimmy McDonald.
Yeah.
There was another station that had just 4 or 5 gizmos that were used to make the sound of Mickey's car. And so you'd watch the video, and it wasn't a thing where it played back. They just kind of played the video over and over again. And you could, do these little doodads and make the noise of like Mickey's jitney. But for the historians, on sort of like a high shelf running around the room were a bunch of Jimmy McDonald's original sound effects machines that were no longer used. Cool. They were just kind of repainted, in pastel colors to look nice and match that. But there was a bunch of his historical devices that he made kind of ringing the room that you could look up and see. And I can't remember if they had little plaques on them that told you what they were. If nothing else, they were just really cool decorations. And I think the story was that the Imagineers who were working on it, went back and to the storage closets where they kept all this stuff, and they let him pick out some things to use, because at that point nobody was making their sound effects that way anymore. You'd record it one time,
you're done
digitally, and then you just play
and you
it
can
back
manipulate
over
too.
again.
You could slow it down. You could move it up.
I have a few here in Burn Bombs. What was on there? Tinkerbell's chimes.
Okay.
Oh,
a door used in Alice in Wonderland. The coconut shells used to produce the hoofbeats in Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Cool. So that's awesome.
That's what they said was there.
Well, gentlemen, I thank you for coming with me on this journey back to the
Monster Sound Show.
I think what's really interesting is that, this is how I viewed it as a young lad of 15 years old going through the first time. I came away from the Disney MGM studios going, wow, they showed me the way that movies were made. They showed me how television was made. They showed me how the audio went into those productions. I got to see how animation was made. And then, by golly, I got to see somebody punch the lights out of Indiana Jones, or at least attempt to, right? I saw the stunts. When you put it in the context of all those things, this is pre-Star Tours. This is, pre any Honey, I Shrunk. It really was a complete package. And this just helped round it out. And again, going back to what we said earlier, we take a lot of this stuff for granted today because it is in the power of our hands every single day to do these things. Other than punch Indiana Jones, that's a tough.
Before we wrap it up, things that were in Disney MGM Studios, and then things that would open a year later in Universal Studios Florida. This was an attraction that had
Yeah.
a, what do we want to call it, a sister or a competitor at Universal Studios in Florida. I assume in
Yes.
Hollywood as well. Isn't that right? Didn't they have like a monster stage sound
Yes.
thing?
Because I don't remember if one of us was asking or if it was a listener who asked, what was the genesis of the Monster Sound Show? Like so many things, I looked at Universal Studios Hollywood because it seems like an awful lot of the things that happened at Disney MGM were also part of that. And, and if you know a little bit about the Disney MGM history, supposedly, Eisner had a full pitch when he was with Paramount of like what was going to be at the studio that Universal was going to build on their tour. And he supposedly stole a lot of that, but it's, never proven. There was a backstage production tour at Universal Studios Hollywood. Sound effects, it was part of a special effects tour that went over a lot of like stop motion and things like that, which had not been refreshed for quite some time. I believe there was a little bit of a sound effects part attached to it, but it wasn't like a standalone attraction. Now, what they did have was a monster makeup show. And so I wonder if the reason that it became the Monster Sound Show, because originally in the pitch film that we saw at the Magic Kingdom, it was called the Disney Sound Experience. But supposedly Eisner was the one that changed the name to the Monster Sound Show. Now, since it has monsters in it, that's also kind of an obvious tie-in, so I don't know if I'm going to give him like humongous credit for that. But it could have been a way to get a little bit of that monster feel into the park that Universal had. Or it might have just been like a big middle finger to them since they were known for having monsters. And this was a way for Disney to steal a little bit of their thunder before they got the Florida park open. Interesting enough, perhaps maybe because of the success of this, Universal Studios Hollywood in 1991 redid that backstage tour and actually did open up a full a standalone sound show themed around Harry and the Hendersons. And then at Universal Studios in Florida, there was a Murder, She Wrote post-production tour, not a tour, a post-production show. And part of that was Foley, very much like this one where they had volunteers out of the audience and they had them do Foley for an episode of Murder, She Wrote. So
because the one in Florida, the Alfred Hitchcock Art of Making Movies, was really more about moving the camera. It wasn't audio, right? Or did that have
was blue screen and stuff? Because I was hanging from some building on a blue screen there. I remember that.
Yeah, I think you were hanging off the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Is that they did Statue of Liberty? I thought it was Psycho.
No, I don't know.
That was in a gift shop. You could
that's a whole other kind of episode, Todd. But yes, there was
a
completely
completely different historical society. Too.
Yeah, the show there briefly sort of they showed some 3D footage that was shot for Dial M for Murder,
right?
Because that was shot in 3D but wasn't released in 3D. But they had the footage, so they were able to show it to you in 3D. And then they had sort of like the birds come through this, through the curtains to scare you. Then they showed you how they shot the shower scene in Psycho. I remember that. Right, and they had the bathtub that came out.
Yeah.
Right. And then in the post-show for that show, they had a bunch of different setups for some of the special effects things. So they showed you in model form like how they shot the effect in Vertigo, where the perspective changes. They had the blue screen that JT was on with the person hanging off the Statue of Liberty. I remember they had this kind of very extensive set for Rear Window where they had like little televisions in the buildings so you could see the people inside of the buildings walking around, and you were sort of like from the perspective of Jimmy Stewart. And so there were little stations like this, which was also in a gift shop there that would show you some interesting things about how they shot the Alfred Hitchcock effects.
As I said, gentlemen, it was, like I said, for me, it was it really brought together all of Disney MGM Studios of what it was in its original incarnation, and really wrapped up the whole thing. And people can say, well, what was Great Movie Ride? Great Movie Ride was the celebration of the movies, right? That's what that was. It was
your history
exciting.
lesson.
That was your history
That was your
lesson.
only ride in the park, really.
You had to ride the movies. That's right.
There's a whole bunch of movies you've never seen, except for maybe the ones at the very end.
Here's looking at you, kid.
Because me going in, I never saw Tarzan, but my grandfather came out saying those were all about the good movies. None of that jumping up and down and hollering. Those were the good movies.
Yeah, but it was the golden age of Hollywood. I mean,
It was.
They were,
That's
and they
what they
narrated it for you, and they took you through each genre, and every single tour leader's favorite genre was horror movies, right?
Except with Indiana
That's
Jones
my
was
favorite.
the only oddball in that one, right? Right, when you think about it.
Which one?
Raiders? You didn't like that
no,
one?
No, it was a great movie, but it didn't match the time frame
You are
of
correct.
all the others.
You rolled into that
Oh,
scene
yeah.
like, what are we doing here? It was
right. You had westerns. You had all the, the the gangsters, and you had John Wayne and the Footlight Parade, and it's all
So
20s, 30s, and 40s, right?
It wasn't like an adventure movie genre at that point.
But they didn't really. I don't know.
Tarzan was it.
Went from Tarzan right into that.
Yeah,
We had
or
to
vice
get to
versa.
the gem on the top for
Right,
them to
right,
touch
right,
it. So
yeah.
that was the segue.
Hey, we got IP. We're going to use it, man. That's
Throw
it.
Indy
We're putting
in.
this in. We're putting this.
You know what? Oh,
Sala. Come on,
we'll have to do an episode on this someday because one of the original plans was to have Ghostbusters in there, and that would have been awesome.
Oh man! Instead, we got that weird show with Behind the Glass.
Yes,
at Universal. That's another.
Yeah, didn't
show.
Ghostbusters end up at Universal?
They did.
Yeah,
They
they
did,
did. I
yeah.
saw the show. It was.
It didn't. I was going to say Ron Schneider, but it's the Blues Brothers show he did. I don't know. Did he have something to do with the
He wrote
Ghostbusters
it,
show
yeah.
too?
Oh no, not the.
I know he
can't
wrote the
remember.
Blues Brothers show.
Oh
I
yeah.
know-
Ghostbusters was like on the rooftop with Gozer and that was
Yeah,
the
but
whole
they had a
thing,
piece
wasn't
of glass or a scrim in front of you so they could do the projections. It was.
Yeah,
interesting.
it was all Big Pepper's ghost show.
Yeah. Yep. It was interesting. Anyway, back to the
Monster Sound Show.
Wrapping up. We've gone
the third
full
time.
For the
Let's try
third
to
time,
close
we're
the
going to
show.
say goodnight to them. Now, thank you for coming aboard with us, gentlemen, on this. I finally remember it. I think all of us got to listen to it, right? All of us went?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
All right, excellent. So Brian's nodding. So so if you have any memories of Monster Sound Show, and if you have any pictures of the post show or the pre-show or actually in the show, there is so little. There's like maybe one major standout photograph, stock photography that's used over and over with them holding up the lookout sign, and that's all that's out there. So if you got anything, please send it our way to podcast@retrowdw.com. All right, gentlemen. Well, before we wrap it up, how maybe we could get a shirt that just says "Look Out"?
Actually,
how easy is that?
I was going to do the Lucky Life Insurance thing.
I was going to.
That would be perfect
would
too.
Be better, yeah.
That would be better. That would
Yeah.
be lucky. Let's get Lucky Life
Maybe Chevy
Insurance.
Chase will buy one.
Yeah,
So
Exactly.
that'll be in the store. And actually, while no one was looking, I snuck in a couple of designs last night.
Oh, wait a
based
minute.
on
Now I got to
our-
go to our own store. I didn't even know.
So based on our Pleasure Island, our last Pleasure Island episode, I have a super wait, what is it? No, I'm
Super
not forgetting.
conscientious, friendly Disney
Yes.
World employee.
A super conscientious, friendly Disney World employee T-shirt. So all you cast members, feel free to buy one of those for yourselves, or if you're just a fan, that's fine too. The other one.
Welcome, Dismal World. What is?
Oh yes. So from the Forbidden Disney show, the sign that falls out of place. So instead of saying "Welcome to Walt Disney World," it says "Welcome to Walt Dismal World." That one is up there too, and I'm gonna sneak out a few more like Adventurers Club, Comedy Warehouse references too.
I love it.
So I'm going to throw out a challenge to the fans here. Although Hal may know this answer off the top of his head, I don't know that there's a correct or incorrect answer here. Martin Short in Monster Sound Show also did the third version of the Canada Circle Vision film. So is there another example of I don't mean like a standard Disney celebrity who's in 50 things. Is there another example of a Hollywood type who was in more than one attraction? And I don't mean like a clip from a movie. I mean like actually doing scripted stuff and 2 different attractions. I'd really be interested.
Wasn't he in 3 attractions?
What's the third one? Wait, help me.
Wasn't he in The Making of Me?
Yes, he was.
Yes, his voice.
Yeah, he was.
Yes.
That's right. He voiced that.
You see his parents get busy and make him that little sperm thing. That's the sperm and the egg. That's Martin Short right there.
I have the slide of that high-res image of that particular scene.
That's Martin Short right there. That's a picture of him.
So that's really fascinating. Like, it just occurred to me as I was sitting here thinking about, wrapping up Martin Short. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. He was in 2 of them and out 3. So there's the challenge. Is there anybody who's been in 2 or 3? Like, I feel like Phil Hartman was maybe in more than 1. He was definitely in the Wonders of Life. What? Right? Wasn't he in?
He was in. He was not in Cranium Command, which is what I think you're thinking of. He was in the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management in the pre-show, and then he was also in Alien Encounter in the first version, where he was the host robot in the pre-show room.
So he's an easy pick. Okay.
So there's 2.
There's 2.
Now there's quite a few celebrities in Cranium Command. Like you've got Dana Carvey and
George
Wendt.
Dana Carvey, and who's
Hans and
Franz?
Not Phil Hartman.
Kevin Nealon.
Kevin Nealon.
And
that was that one is SNL Overload.
Bobcat Goldthwait, Charles Grodin.
Yeah, I don't. Charles Grodin was in the Muppet special, but I don't think he was in another attraction.
Right?
No.
Huh. So there it is out there, folks. Send them in.
That's right.
We're interested in. You'll remember some of the ones we don't, I'm sure. But that's interesting that, Martin Short's like gum on your shoe when it comes to attractions, right? Like
he's like Walt Disney World's George Rasenberger, where
that's right.
He has an appearance in every park just to keep it legitimate.
That's right. All right. Well, how we move from T-shirts to that, but anyway, wow, we're quick, we're fast moving. It's a fast pace. But with that said, Brian, I'm going to turn this over to you. Give our listeners a little update on Retro Magic. Plans are coming along, but just as a friendly reminder, and we will be announcing things in the upcoming months, but just give them a quick reminder of when and where they can go and to learn to sign up for more information.
All right. Well, you can go to retromagic.org, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can go to retromagic.org and it'll take you right to the splash page. Nothing's for sale yet, and probably won't be until mid to late autumn, I think. We're going to do a live rollout one night. Probably, well, we have a couple things in the works. So let me preface it by saying before I tell you about Retro Magic, we have a live presentation we are doing with the Orlando Public Library, right?
That's right.
And that is Saturday, October 15th, I think. Is that the date? I'm pretty sure that's the date. Saturday, October 15th. And it's going to be at 11 o'clock in the morning. Actually, 16th.
16th.
Yeah, Saturday, October 16th. And it'll be 11 o'clock in the morning, and we'll be sharing more details. The libraries actually will probably have posted it by the time that this episode is released, but we'll be doing a presentation, sharing some of our audio-visual stuff in celebration of Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary in October.
Oh, are they having their 50th anniversary this year?
They are. So
I wouldn't have known.
I don't think I've heard anything about this.
Yeah, so we had the opportunity to participate with the Orlando Public Library. We're looking forward to that. And then, yes, we are hosting our own celebration the weekend of April 22nd through 24th in 2022, which is closer than you think, folks. And when we're about 6 months out, we're going to do a live event on YouTube streaming like we do our movie nights, possibly during the day. But we'll be doing a live rollout of our roster. And I have to tell you, we have some exciting guests lined up. We're still working on it. We're still pulling everything together. But I think we're going to top the last event.
For sure.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to it.
And we're looking to bring people who've never been to Florida events before.
Yep.
Who've got connections to some of the most iconic pieces of the parks and the history of the parks, and I'm just really excited about it.
We're hitting a lot of different areas with the guests we've got lined up, and so much. I think we're so much stuff that hasn't been talked about yet that is going to be talked about and brought forth, which is great. Really looking forward to it. I also want to give a shout out, Brian, and everybody, to everyone who donated in our fundraiser drive with the Halloween carousel of pumpkin ornament. Those are now in production, and they will be delivered to our door sometime in the early October timeframe, and then we'll certainly get them out to you immediately thereafter. So thanks to everyone who donated, and your gifts will be en route to you soon for the Halloween season. With that said, we will be working on a holiday ornament, as we always do, and that is, gentlemen, you saw it the other day. We're very close to getting all the artwork done. The samples are in progress. We just got to do some painting and some tweaks, and it's looking pretty good if you don't... I do say so myself.
It certainly is.
Yeah, it might even top last year's in a way. I don't know. It's a tough one.
I think it might.
Yep, it might. So stay tuned for more information on that in the upcoming month or so. With that, next month, guys, we did not plan it this way until we realized that we could do it. Next month's podcast will be coming out in October, and it is officially, for us, episode 71. How cool is that? Wow. Our 71st main episode. That's a milestone to us. I can't even remember all the little half episodes and things we've done, but 71, and we will release it. Hopefully, if we can pull this off, we'll release it right on October 1. Or better yet, maybe, Brian, let's release it October 25th, the real opening day, right? What was it, 23rd?
Well, yeah, conclusion of the opening ceremonies weekend, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll hold off and there's too much going on around October 1. So.
Roy and Edna Disney and Lillian Disney and who else was there? Glenn Campbell.
He strolled right out from those trees. So, but so we're going to do a podcast around the 50th. We're not going to be sitting here reviewing things and picking any specific topic. It's kind of going to be a 50th potpourri, if you will, and Brian's got some ideas, so we're working on bringing that to you. So it's a little change of pace for what we do, but I think it's well warranted for the 50th anniversary, and actually gives us a little breather room here to not do research and kind of take a little break from researching and producing episodes. So it'll still be a great one. We're looking forward to bringing it to you. And after that, I think we have a couple ideas on deck. How you've got to go back to Alien Encounter Part 2. I know we've talked about ImageWorks. That might be one that I'm going to start writing to for later in the year. My goodness, we've got a lot of places to go yet. We've got Wonders of Life we got to do. We got to do Body Wars. We've got to do Journey into Imagination. There's just so much still. It's 71 episodes, and we haven't covered all the closed stuff, So,
well, they've closed a lot of stuff over the years, so.
That's right. And for those who are crying when things close, just remember, when things close, it's more episodes for the people who replace us 25 years from now to talk about. So remember, that's right. We may not be here. I hope I'm not doing this in 25 years, but I'll come as clones. I'll come as a guest. Our clones, yes.
They're clones.
He'll come as a guest.
I'll come on as a guest.
We wheel him out once a year. Here he is.
Here he is coming in. Well, with that, thank you everybody to listening, especially listening to this month since we're in stereo. A big thank you to Hal on the left-hand side.
Hey, over here.
JT on the right.
Hello.
Brian, we've shifted over to the left.
Oh, hello over there.
And a big thanks from me over back here on the right. So we hope you enjoyed this stereo episode of the Retro Disney World podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. We'll be back next month with our special 50th anniversary episode of Walt Disney World. Until then, if you can, give us a shout out, review iTunes, or whatever your favorite podcasting app is. And again, thank you to all of our supporters. If you'd like to support the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, you can do so at lbvhhistory.org/donate. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next month. And with that, Brian, take us out.
Monster Sound Show.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Cougar on Twitter at LS1JT and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.
Look
out!
Look out!